Thank everybody for coming today. I need to give most of the credit, though, to Harry Braun. I don't know if you know him, but I think he's one of the best scientists of our generation. He's in Arizona. He realized 30 or 40 years ago that we'd have an energy problem at some point, and so he began thinking and working on it. And his solution was to move to renewable hydrogen. He has a website. I guess he's still alive. I haven't had the internet in a number of years, so I haven't been able to keep up with him. But he has an internet site. I think it's phoenixprojectfoundation.us. And he has a number of solutions for different problems that faces. His original solution was just to make a bunch of windmills that was off the coast of like California, out of sight, and would be making electricity and then shipping it in. And one of his innovations was to use the hydrogen that would be produced to run in the same pipe that you put the electricity through. And that way all the transmission would be at superconducting and there'd be no loss of energy. And in fact, New York City uses this now underground, and they use nitrogen, not hydrogen, but in all their main power lines, they've replaced them with these nitrogen-filled systems so there's just no loss of electricity in their big lines. So that was one of his inventions, and almost everything I'm going to tell you today was his idea, although I've added a few things of my own, I think, to make it a little more complete. The basic idea is just the equation that this is essentially an infinite system. There's a finite amount of water on the planet, but the production of hydrogen is an infinite thing. You just take water, a little bit of electricity, it breaks it apart into the oxygen and the hydrogen. You collect them separately, you burn them or use them in whatever method. We'll go through a number of methods today, but you recombust the chemical energy out of it, and you have the same water left over that you started with. So that process can be infinite in its process. So one of the first things I would like to discuss is probably the very biggest problem of all, and that's power plants in the generation of electricity on the grid so that it's constant and always there. I saw in the news the other night, there was a team from MIT and several other major universities saying, oh, we just can't use renewable energy because there's not a cheap battery to store it. There's no way that we can store this energy. But since the 30s, we've known that the way to store renewable energy is by hydrogen. Even in the 30s, some farmers couldn't get gasoline during the different wars, and they've powered their own tractors. They just took a starter off of an old tractor, put a propeller on it, put the two wires into a barrel of water, and then got a balloon to collect the results, which is hydrogen and oxygen, which is a bomb at that point. But then they used that to run their tractors when they couldn't get any other energy. So the method has been known forever, and I don't know why our top scientists in the world don't understand that and realize that hydrogen is a very cheap battery. You just have to build a storage tank large enough to hold whatever amount you want. So one of the problems that we've been facing in our own backyard is a Four Corners power plant. And one of the handouts here is a mechanism for converting the entire Four Corners power plant to renewable hydrogen. I've sent this proposal to the president and every other person that represents me at every level of government throughout from the county on up to the president. Most of them don't answer, and the ones that do answer, it acts like they haven't even read my letter. I guess they find the word hydrogen in my letter and then go get a stock letter they have that has the word hydrogen in it and send that back to me. I've written the Navajo Nation, I've written PNM, and I've written everybody, and nobody wants to even look at the problem. I've asked the governor on more than one occasion just to hold a conference on moving to renewable hydrogen so that maybe our state could take the lead in this and we could get the economic advantage if we were the first to move. So the whole concept is that I don't have the internet, so I don't know if the calculations are correct, but I calculated that about 40 square miles of solar panels around that plant would produce enough hydrogen day and night to run the thing 24 hours a day to run all 4 generators. And so the process would be something like this, where it would probably take the first one would be very expensive, and it would take a lot of coordination among different people, but I could see Google coming in and providing their knowledge, and I could see some of the solar companies coming in and providing knowledge. And it would all be automated, I think, and very efficient. But the idea would be get the first one going, and it would become an example for the rest of the world at that point of how you could change it. So I would have like a solar factory out there that's actually making the solar panels. And to preserve the environment, I would have drones that went out and mapped everything. And then people are in a nice room designing the system. I would have some large spider vehicles that would go out and plant all the supports for it. And then as the panels were made, there might be large spider things that would go out and automatically install them. Maybe hundreds of them actually working at the same time, all walking out and just installing the panels. My calculations show they'd have to install something like 15,000 panels a day, 250 watt panels, to do the whole project in 10 years. And so what that would do was drive down the cost of making panels. It would drive down the cost of producing all of that. The net result, though, is when it's through, is that the power plants will be devoted to completely hydrogen. So they would never have to buy any more fuel for the power plant, and they would never produce any more pollution. What you would do is, as you started the project, you would power all the vehicles and everything, the factory and everything, off the first hydrogen made. And so everything would be made totally clean. And then you would just start injecting into one of the generators, into the boilers, hydrogen. The more hydrogen you inject, the cleaner the process of the burning is. And at some point, you'd get to the place where it would be all hydrogen burning and no coal involved. Then after those generators wore out, the ideal system is moved to gas turbine generators, where you don't boil water at all. All you do is like a jet engine. You burn the hydrogen directly in a gas turbine, and it produces the electricity straight from there. So you could have a multiple of smaller generators giving more backup and allowing it to produce the constant power 24 hours a day. One of the things that I can't believe that we keep hearing on TV is renewables don't work because the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow. Well, when the sun is shining and the wind is blowing, make extra hydrogen. I mean, it seems that easy to me. So once we got to the process where we were making large quantities of electricity free like that, then different things like desalinization would be possible. It's only energy that keeps that from happening. So we have water problems all over the country, and it's only a matter of energy. If there was a free plant generating enough energy, then you could have desalinization of large amounts of it. So everything that runs on steam could be replaced by this, and nuclear power plants are one of them. Anybody that says that nuclear is not carbon intensive, I think it just doesn't understand the problem because of all the transportation, all the different things, the mining that's involved. There's an awful lot of carbon. And then the best I can tell, the very best minds on earth have yet to figure out what to do with the results of the nuclear reactors. Right now, they're essentially being stored on site everywhere around the world, which is a danger to everybody. One of the advantages of hydrogen is there's just almost no danger to it. It's a light gas, and if you get enough oxygen, it is a bomb. But in a number of situations, NASA was transported a lot of hydrogen during the 60s when they were going to the moon. And several times the trucks crashed, and there was no serious incident. And if it had been hydrocarbons, it would have been dirty, things burning everywhere. Hydrogen is so light, though, that it just tends to escape when it gets a chance. So the next thing is, and to me, I don't care what method we use to generate the hydrogen. It could be windmills or solar panels or anything that's renewable. But I particularly like solar panels because they just work forever. They have no moving parts. They could be used, the DC current directly to make hydrogen rather than going through an alternating current phase, which I think would be more efficient. And there's just no maintenance to them. There's just nothing to do. I've been running my panels now for about 15 years, and the last time I measured them, they were still outputting the same as when I got them, essentially. And so I have my own empirical evidence of how well they work and how long they work. And by the way, the first panel ever made is still working. And so that's oftentimes used as an argument against them. The next system I'd like to discuss is the transportation system. And that's where a great deal of the pollution is made in our country and in around the world. The first thing to do, I think, would be trains. It's just so obvious that they have large tanks. They could move very easily. They fill up in one place, so you could have a hydrogen production facility there. It would be so easy to convert the trains to run on hydrogen. During World War II, the Germans did an awful lot of research on hydrogen, and they converted every kind of engine. They even did a submarine at one point that was running on hydrogen. The advantage being no pollutants, and it only produces water, so there's not even bubbles that come up from it when it's burning hydrogen underwater. It just makes more water, and so you can't actually see it. And so apparently Mercedes-Benz has never stopped experimenting with hydrogen internal combustion engines. And this is one of the things that seems to be the great secret. I saw a whole show this morning on hydrogen fuel cells and how we can, that's now the future and it's here and we can move to it. But what they don't tell everybody is that every internal combustion engine ever made can be converted to run hydrogen. The cars that you're driving right now could be converted to run on hydrogen if there was just a source of it somewhere that you could buy it easily. And according to Harry Braun, this was probably 10 years ago I read that, but it was like $600 a car to convert. 3 different car manufacturers now have out hydrogen fuel cell vehicles that require hydrogen. And so cheap fuel tanks have now been developed that everyone could share in. So you'd need a fuel tank, you'd need a pump, and the modifications of the carburation system, and that's essentially all you need. Most of the ones that have been converted in the past, there's a little knob, hydrogen or hydrocarbon, and if you have hydrocarbon, that's what you use. If you have hydrogen, that's what you use, or you can use halfway in between. So that's all been done and experimented with, and is apparently real, and doesn't require any new knowledge on mankind's part. Just the awareness that we could do this if we would just start on it. The one exception I would have for trains is the coal-fired railroads. I think they could be converted to run on hydrogen, but it just wouldn't be the same if you couldn't pick the coal dust out of your hair after that. So I would have one exception for coal-fired trains. So autos can be converted. In the 50s, a 707 one engine was converted to run on hydrogen. And so jet engines work perfectly good on hydrogen. It's probably the biggest problem because you just can't put a fuel tank on top of the plane, and hydrogen is tough to store right now. We can't store it in odd shapes like in the wing where they store fuel. So Harry Braun just suggested that we put 2 doors on the front of the plane and you put a big hydrogen tank between the pilot and the passengers, and then nobody would get up front that way. And you could convert a plane by losing a few seats, then it would run on hydrogen from then on. And then that's one of the things that would have to be worked on. There's some evidence that we can store hydrogen in solids, and there may be a way of making special solids that would fit into the wing tanks at some point, but that is something that would have to be discovered. And I've, most of my life, been a big fan of NASCAR and racing, and I wish they would take the advance on this and convert theirs to run on hydrogen. Unfortunately, they're all sponsored by fuel companies, but one of the disadvantages of hydrogen, it is under extreme pressure and cold temperature, and so you can't, just like on gasoline, you can't just throw a tank in there and let gravity feed it. It has to be a very positive, and it probably takes 5 minutes to fill up a vehicle, so that's something NASCAR would have to work out. But I watched the program this morning. They're showing there's 50 hydrogen stations in California right now because they're encouraging the hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. So it's a common practice. You can do it right now. Hydrogen is made there, and there's nothing keeping us from doing it. The next thing I'd like to discuss is that I would like to see it go everywhere. I'd like to someday see a little camping outfit. You have your little solar panel, and you make your hydrogen for your fuel stove, and have a little maybe compressor that helps you compress it, and you go on a 2-week. And if you did that, then you could use fuel cell batteries, which instead of batteries, you just add hydrogen to it. You don't have to charge them. You just put a little bit of hydrogen, and then it's a battery, a fuel cell that would just run your flashlight. So that would probably last among things. Another thing is there should be some amount of home production of this. I'm going to suggest at some point that every house in Los Alamos have solar panels on it. People could make their own hydrogen, wouldn't have to worry about it unless they was going on a trip. And also, natural gas is the most clean burning of the hydrocarbons, and would probably be the last to be replaced. But if you was making your own hydrogen, it seems like it'd be very easy to inject that hydrogen into the pipeline, which would make the natural gas more efficient and make the whole process more efficient and save you money. Because every hydrogen you make on your own, after your equipment is paid for, it never costs you again. The next thing I'd like to discuss is like third world countries. Our county council recently spent $50,000 to come up with a new slogan, and it was live exponentially, make sure there's nothing left for the poor or the future. And I went to him one day and I talked to him and I said, you know, what's important for humanity is to learn that we need to change reality, not change the appearance of reality. By making a new slogan, you're trying to just change the appearance. It's like changing the flags on Main Street. Well, that's not going to change anybody's thoughts of Los Alamos. Every one of them is going to think about the bomb. So I said what we should do is be involved in making these hydrogen stations that we take to third world countries. Right now, a lot of the children and adults go out into the forest or wherever they can, gather hydrocarbons, bring them back into their camp every day, burn them in their houses. They ingest them, it hurts them, it goes into the atmosphere and eventually hurts everybody. What I would foresee is a day when maybe the young kid would go into the center of the village and he has this balloon and he goes up to the hydrogen station and he fills up this big hydrogen balloon, which is enough to last his family all day. And then while he's there, he might check the internet to see, check on his English or charge the batteries for his tablets or his cell phone that would give him connections to the rest of the world. The system would also like pump water and purify it and just be a little central unit there that benefited the lives of those people. And I said, if we put across the top of that, courtesy of your friends in Los Alamos, I said, I bet that kid growing up getting hydrogen from that station would never remember the bomb. He would remember us for doing something good to the world. So my point to them was do something real to change the image, not just try to change the image itself. Let's do something that's better and greater than the bomb, so we'll be remembered for it. So I would have a fully integrated system that would use whatever, there'd be different sizes for different villages, but it would provide all of these necessities of life for them. And we see everywhere where education gets to the people, things change for the better. And if people know about the internet and know what other people are doing in the world and they want to do the same thing and they want to be like them, and it just raises the whole character of the world. Next, I'd like to discuss the economic benefits of doing this. For one thing, the economic benefits are not being calculated in almost anything we do. I think the gold mine that it was in Colorado that the water burst open and it polluted the thing. Well, somebody took all the gold out of there, but they didn't pay the entire price. They just paid a part of the price. The rest of the prices has to be paid by all of us because of the pollution that's caused. And it's the same with the hydrocarbons. We're not counting the full cost of what it's doing to us. Right now, the autism rate in our country is approaching 1 in 55 or something like that, children. If everybody's autistic in the future, how are we going to keep our society going? And what is causing that autism? To me, it could easily be caused by the influence of hydrocarbons in our environment. There are studies that show that maybe every cell on the planet has 200 to 250 chemicals in it that didn't exist before mankind started our industrial revolution. And that our pollution is virtually hit everything on the planet. So we're not counting the full cost. Moving to a hydrogen would be probably fairly expensive for the infrastructure at first, but then the benefits and the total cost would be measurable and would be good for mankind, not costing us over decades. And then one of the things, if we did move to hydrogen and everybody knew about it, then all the little mom and pop shops around that have an automotive thing could begin converting all the cars. That would be such a tremendous boost to the economy. That would probably be several million jobs. It would be clean jobs. It would be beneficial to mankind. More people would start producing hydrogen. One of the things I've thought is we could, cover all the houses in Los Alamos with panels. And since everybody can't afford it, there's people here who have extra money, and they invest it maybe in the stock market or CDs or something. To me, an investment in the stock market is, I don't think it's real. I mean, you're investing in, I think this stock is going to do good, but you're not actually giving it to that company to see if they can make a better product or something. You're just guessing. Whereas if you invested in solar panels and hydrogen, we know that for the foreseeable future, people are going to need energy. And we know that for the foreseeable future, it's going to provide energy. So however long you have to make the amortization on it, there is some amount that sooner or later it pays for itself, and then it begins generating free from that point on. That seems like a great economic benefit. And it's my opinion that the last few wars we've been in have been over oil. Just, simply because we thought we needed the oil and we thought they had it. Whereas if every country, and we was encouraging every country to move to a hydrogen production, at some point that would just vanish as a need for conflict on the planet Earth. And surely that's got to help us get to peace, if nothing else will. So I think there's a bunch of economic advantages that we're not looking at. The other thing is, since we would be in control of the production, we could actually maybe even set a price. And maybe since energy has so much effect on the economy, when energy prices go up, then it hurts everybody else except the oil companies. But with hydrogen, if we was to move to a hydrogen economy, we could just set whatever price maybe we wanted it to be so that it would be stable all the time. Some economists better than me would have to figure that out, but it's just an idea that I had that Harry Braun thinks that it would stabilize at $2 a gallon. Although at some point we would be producing an excess of hydrogen, and at that point it would be downward pressure on it. And I don't know if it's possible or not, but it might be, if the government was divesting these stations, maybe they could pay off the national debt by the free hydrogen they would get at some point. I don't know. They don't seem to always do a good job with things. And the military also would benefit. Right now the military consumes immense amounts of oil. All other things could be converted over to hydrogen, although in a perfect world we would not be using them at all. And then one of the problems that we're going to face if we do move to a hydrogen economy and stop pumping oil from the ground is, where do we get oil to make things with? And so there's a number of different plants and things, hemp being one of them, that would produce great amounts of oil. Somebody needs to do a study and see how much we would have to produce to replace oil completely if we didn't dig any more oil wells. Another thing about solar energy and oil wells is that an oil well, lots of times you hit a dry well, but with solar energy you would never hit a dry well. Whatever money you put into solar energy, it's going to be there into the future. The next thing I'd like to discuss is Los Alamos' role in the whole thing. And pretty soon the dump panels will revert to the county because the experiment is over there. And so what I've suggested to them is they convert that whole thing to producing hydrogen, and they just keep adding panels. Like I said, I put them on every building, all the public buildings, all the homes. I'd even lighten all the mesas out here, the south-facing mesa, make a thing we could put them on wires and produce all the energy that we need. Now, again, the problem is, how do we get energy at night? And over at the lab, there's a gas turbine generator not being used. So what I would do is produce the hydrogen in town, ship it over through the pipes to the generator, have it make electricity, bring it back in the middle so we could test that entire concept of superconducting transfer of the electricity. And test, in essence, the entire program here in Los Alamos. Test everything, convert all of our vehicles to run on hydrogen, produce all of our own hydrogen, and just set an example. And the best I can tell, the only hardship that it would cause on the public is that hydrogen evaporates somewhat, and you'd have to fill up your car more often. So if the citizens of Los Alamos could bear that burden, I think we could convert to a hydrogen society with very little effect upon the people. One of the things too is our county has a goal of 20% renewable energy, and I can understand why the goal is not 100%. One of the things I wrote to the governor, I said, if you don't think hydrocarbons are bad, then why don't you put your children or your grandchildren at the exhaust pipe of your car and let them play there for a while? And if you're really thrilled about the hydrocarbons, take it in the garage and let them play in the garage with the car running. Of course, pretty soon you'd be arrested because the children would die. So, I mean, all of us know that hydrocarbons are bad and that we shouldn't be breathing them, but for some reason we continue to put them into the environment. The other thing I would do is have the high school teach hydrogen. We have an automotive shop over there. Scott is a great instructor. Have him teach how to convert vehicles to run on hydrogen, have a hydrogen production system right there at the high school so they could sell hydrogen themselves to help pay for the thing, and then have that coordinated with the lab so the lab would always be teaching them and helping them do the right thing, and any new things learned could be taught immediately to the students. But to me, it seems like to me that would be a very good thing for all the students. They would all have a job thing for years to come of being able to convert and knowing about that. So next I'd like to cover too, I just mentioned Ben Ray Lujan, who was the first one I ever contacted about this. He came to some friends of mine's house years and years ago when they put solar panels on it. He came to get the political benefit, and so I met him that day and I shook his hand and said, thank you for coming and everything. And I put Harry Braun's paper in his hand that showed how to, in 10 years, we could totally convert our country to renewable hydrogen. In probably 15 years, the whole world. And so, last thing he said to me was, I'll keep in touch. And that's the last I've heard from him. I've written 15 or 20 letters since then that he won't even answer. So the old joke is, how do you know if a politician is lying? His lips move. Now, there are several problems with hydrogen. The first of all is it burns so cleanly that there is no flame appearance. I mean, you can't see a flame, so if it was burning in your stove, you wouldn't know it unless maybe there was an element there that changed color or something. That seems to be a small technical problem, but it is one problem with hydrogen, is that you can't even see it burning. Also, I read a study many years ago that said that if we did switch to a hydrogen economy, there was a danger of putting too much hydrogen into the atmosphere. I don't know if that is really a problem or not, but surely it's something that scientists could work on then to figure out ways to scrub it and determine if it is actually really a problem. Another problem that's given is that the infrastructure doesn't exist for hydrogen, and I think that's kind of a false problem, because the whole solution to hydrogen ought to be local production everywhere. So there really wouldn't need to be much added to the nationwide infrastructure. There would just be local hydrogen produced. It seems crazy to me that oil is produced in Saudi Arabia and then sent to Ireland and then goes to Japan and then ends up in the United States. Why transport all these things that far? Why not just make the energy we need right where we need it? That would save so much cost, wear and tear on everybody. So I don't think the infrastructure is that big a deal. If the business people just understood they could sell hydrogen and that the equipment would pay for itself in time, I think the business people would jump all over this, and there ought to be stations all along the interstate there selling hydrogen and offering to convert people's vehicles, both cars and trucks. And then the Zeppelin accident has given hydrogen a really bad name, and it's often been blamed as the cause of the accident. But the studies show that it wasn't the hydrogen in it that caused the problem, it was the aluminum oxide skin. The skin was made in panels like this. One of the panels got separated from the others, so it gained a difference in potential from the rest of the thing. At some point, a spark jumped between the two, and that's what caused the skin to catch fire. If you go back and look at the pictures of it, you'll see it's the skin is burning. The hydrogen all escaped, and nobody in the thing was hurt by hydrogen. It all escaped. The ones that were burned by the fuel oil that was used to power the thing, to power the diesel motors down below. So hydrogen has got a bad rap ever since that time, and hydrogen really wasn't the problem. Also, I find it interesting that the way they contain the hydrogen with cow's appendix. They found out that a cow's appendix is impervious to hydrogen, and then if you wet them and do them right, they stick together. And so they made these gigantic bags. I think it took several thousand cows to make a Zeppelin. And then the last thing I'd like to talk about is the lab doing research on all of this. Yeah, we've got such a wonderful institution over here that could be doing so much to help the world, and right now doesn't have the best reputation. Seems like we can't even throw our trash away properly over there, and that's what the world sees. If we would coordinate and work together and bring hydrogen and bring solutions to the problems, then I think the image of this town could change drastically, and maybe we could be the smartest town, and maybe we could lead the world to a new hydrogen economy. So that's all for now.